Hey guys, this is Kenjiro and welcome to another PaintShop Pro video. Today we're going to be embarking on the journey of doing sort of a long commentary on how I did the epic fighting image that I created, and I have a time-lapse video on that. I did it a little while back. There's a lot of elements of videos I've done before that are in these, but this tutorial aims to try to just end-to-end show how I got from, the starting images to the final image. And there's a lot of things that we can learn along the way. Now, since this is going to be so long, I'm going to break it up into 3 or possibly 4 parts. And this video is going to focus primarily on separating the two swordsmen from the original image, and then correcting or adding, if you will, filling in the chopped off hand at the top of the jumping swordsman. So let's get to it. So to start off, I'm going to do my standard approach when coming to doing background erasing and really wanting to make sure that I erase all the different parts, that there's no strays or nothing. And in doing that, what I do is I create a new layer and fill it with something like black, and then move it underneath the image I'm trying to erase. And that way, as I'm erasing, I should see perfect black. And as you can see, even right now, as I'm starting to erase, there's little speckles, and there's certain areas where it didn't erase very cleanly, and the black just makes it really easy to see. So starting off with the background eraser, I have 2 videos that currently exist already on how to leverage the background eraser to achieve some of these results. What you're seeing here, is probably much more like my tutorial, which is how to erase a difficult background, because there isn't just sort of this clean separation all around the figure where you can just drag the background eraser around and it's just done. This one, there's a lot more elements where the background reference is very similar in color to the subject that we're trying to preserve. So in situations like this, really what I'm doing here is, going over, using Control Z or undoing a whole lot, if a certain stroke doesn't work well. And the key that I found is it's all about the reference, right? So whatever you first click on is what it's going to try to find as much similarity as it can, and also distinguish it from all the other parts of the image. So any parts that you're going to try to erase, if it's a similar color to, say, like the skin or the hair, most likely using the background eraser is going to fail in that particular case. So you can see how I'm being very meticulous about what I'm using as my starting reference in a lot of cases. And in a lot of ways, this is a method of using the background eraser in more of a point clicking fashion rather than a dragging fashion. As well, in certain areas, you're going to need to change the size of the eraser, just so that its level of impact is minimal to the subject that you're trying to preserve. But it's a very meticulous process, and the background eraser just kind of helps you get close. And what's going to happen is, afterward, we're going to chase this and do some cleanup with just the standard eraser. Another aspect of using the background eraser which can be helpful is treating it almost like as if it's a regular eraser, meaning you're not grossly trying to run the circle, if you will, over the subject, but that you're still trying to skirt the line, kind of like you would with a normal eraser, and maintain some shape. And then it just prevents like any major erasures of your subject, the part you want to keep, and then that way your strokes are still beneficial in removing some of the background and minimizing how much of the subject is being affected. So like I mentioned in my erasing the difficult background video, doing these kinds of things is always going to be meticulous and time consuming, and it's just a matter of patience and slowly but surely over time learning what levels of sharpness or what parts of the background to use as a reference to make this whole process go at least a little bit faster. One other thing you'll note is there's certain parts of the image where I've, kind of erased, and I clearly kind of cut out some parts of the subject, but I'm kind of leaving it. I don't really care to just go back and constantly try to fix it or massage it or whatnot. And that's primarily because there's always going to be a point of wanting or of trying to make trades, right? That you can spend hours and hours, trying to get everything exactly perfect. Or you can try to find the middle of, good enough, right? And so, just like with the regular eraser, you can, right click to unerase as long as you're still using the same tool, you're still using the background eraser. But what you'll notice is there's some areas where I'm not perfectly cleaning it up, and it's just because in the sum of the image, I expect later on that it's really not going to be that big of a deal. So some parts of the sword and some parts of his foot kind of had some, overextension of erasure into its area, but I didn't really go back and fix it. And so once we get enough separation here, even if it's not a perfectly clean line, once we get enough separation here, we can use the lasso tool to, just drag around this sort of buffer region that we created. And then eventually what we're going to do is just delete all the excess. If you have a pen and a tablet, some of these operations can be made easier. I have one, but I don't use it very often, so I'm not very good with it. So most of the or pretty much everything you see me doing in these tutorials is all with the mouse. All right, so once we have our two figures selected, we can invert and then hit delete. And then now we're left with, a pretty good set of separation. Most of the major chunks are gone. And now we're just going to clean up all of these stray little like pixels, hairs, and, extensions, and mostly really just hitting the obvious things. And similarly, there's going to be a mixture of erasing and unerasing, especially for corners that are sharper that the round eraser can't quite get to. Left clicking and right clicking to achieve those effects as long as you have the same tool active. And then for sure, also needing to adjust the size and hardness as necessary for different parts of the image. Now, one note that could be said here, if you didn't want to try to leverage the background eraser, if you felt like, that doesn't really save you time, you just as well could go straight eraser and non-background eraser, and then just go through this level of effort that you see kind of happening currently. Or if you are going to take the approach of doing this level of painting, you just as well could be using a mask and doing the mask modify painting approach. One quick tip, if you have like a paintbrush kind of a tool selected and you want to quickly adjust its size, you can hold Alt down and then drag up or down, and then that will adjust the size of your brush. So when you see my brush changing size, but I'm not messing with any of the sliders, that's what I'm doing. The hands are another good example of kind of over erasing and then using the right click to unerase to get some of that shape back and then achieve some of those sharper corners. Now at this stage, I kind of realized that the feet got pretty badly mangled by the background erasure. So, and at this point, since I've already switched to my tool, I don't have the opportunity to unerase. So what I can do at this stage is bring the original image back into the view as a separate layer. And then I can use a very simple selection like a box selection, for example. Just around the region that I want to fix. And then in the same way, invert the selection and then delete everything. So then all I'm left with is just the region that I want to be able to kind of re-cut out. And in this case, since the hue and saturation and whatnot of the foot is so similar to the background that I'm not going to use the background eraser. I'm just going to use the original eraser or the regular eraser just to get that shape around there, and then rely on the underlying erasure for all the other parts. And then once we've fully corrected it, to an acceptable level, then we can just merge that layer down, and then it becomes just a part of the original cutout image. So for the most part, that's pretty good. Given the fact that I'm going to be putting this on a dark background, I would say this level of separation is sufficient. So next, what I want to do is kind of bring the jumping swordsman down slightly, just so that the composition's a little bit better. And, I don't have this issue of his cut off hand. So that's what we're going to, work with next. So my approach here is really just to kind of make a copy of the existing, knuckle digit sections, and then just, paste them over where the other fingers are. In reality or in close inspection, it's really not going to be that convincing, but since the hand is going to be such a small part of, my overarching image, I'm not going to spend too much time here really trying to make it look at, like, say, this level of resolution like a convincing hand that was always there. So just copying the digits and then erasing around to achieve some manner of blending. And I think generally speaking it's pretty good, it's pretty convincing, but when you're zoomed out, you really can't tell that it's kind of an oddly shaped finger. So we kind of did that for the first finger, and then we'll do it again for the pinky, if you will. So we'll copy that image again and then move it over slightly so that we have that one good knuckle there as our reference, and then we can shrink it a little bit since that last finger is smaller. Erase the extra finger. So here I try to make use of the smart clone brush, but it doesn't quite get me what I'm looking for. So then I just go down the path of copying a good section of the handle color and then pasting that and then using that as my reference. Back in the day with older versions of PaintShop Pro, I would have used just the original clone tool to achieve this, because that tool didn't quite have all of the edge detection and, you know, context aware, you know, capabilities, which really makes, in my opinion, using the clone tool less predictable. So this is sort of the alternative I have for this one little section here. If it was a much more detailed section, it would be a little bit harder to use this approach. But again, you know, the handle and the hand and everything are such an insignificant part of the image, really, that we're just trying to put something there so that it gives the viewer, you know, something that, you know, mentally represents what we would expect to be there without a lot of fidelity. So just kind of scaling and then erasing just to give the handle a little bit more shape like we would expect. Trying to stay a little bit consistent with the rest of the image. I think at this stage I figured the handle seemed a little too long, so I shortened it. And then we merge all of those layers down so that we have just our, you know, one fixed hand with the handle and the two figures on two separate layers. So that's it for part one. Be on the lookout for upcoming videos where we're going to cover some of the capabilities of turning the daytime to nighttime aspects, using the Particle Shop plugin to create some of the cool fire and ring effects. And then finishing off with color grading everything just so that the scene kind of, you know, blends all together, and maybe some minor lighting adjustments. But that's it for this one. If you have any questions or if you'd like to recommend content, feel free to leave a comment. If you'd like to get updates, like when I post the next parts of this video, go ahead and check the subscribe button. And if you'd like to support me and the channel, go ahead and check out the Patreon page that I have, which is on the link on the TV, and I'll see you guys next time.